Very, a very warm welcome to all the participants, delegates, and organizing team. Today, we are joined by Professor Francesca from Poly Design under the ServDes 25 lecture series, Lecture 4. So, her topic of today's presentation is measuring the impact of service design. So, this is part of the like an ongoing series, and today the fourth like a session we are going to interact with. So to introduce the today's presenter, well, Professor Francesca works as a researcher, consultant, and lecturer in the field of service design, service innovation, and design research. She holds a PhD in design and currently collaborates with the Department of Design of Politecnico di Milano as project manager for European research projects and as adjunct professor at the School of Design. She also collaborates with companies and public organizations to support the development and evaluation of innovative service solutions and to foster the adoption of a human-centered and impact-driven approach. Until year 2022, she was the didactic coordinator of the Specializing Master in Service Design, and since 2023, she is director of the executive courses of the Cluster Service Systems Design and Evaluation of Polydesign. So I would invite Professor Francesca to take over from here on and start her presentation. So welcome to you, Professor.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Talking about this very complex but interesting topic, which is measuring the impact of service design. So I share my screen and please tell me if everything fine. Okay, so actually you just said everything about me. So as you were saying, I'm a service designer actually working in the field of research and teaching and doing a bit of consultancy. But my very focus is that of evaluation. And I did a lot of research in the past few years, starting from my PhD, trying to understand how to integrate evaluation, the evaluation practice, which is not a common competence for service designers, into the service design process to understand better how we can actually measure the value, the effect, and the impact of what we design, of the services that we create and we contribute at. All the discoveries that I did during my research are summarized in this book, and I'm very happy to say that finally we have also recently launched last year, an entire post-executive course dedicated to this topic at Polydesign, which is an international course in English online, so you can access it very, very easily. But starting from the very beginning, I would like to start my speech by reflecting with you about why we are talking about measuring the impact of service design. So why there is the need to talk about impact and evaluation in service design practice. So we are well aware that in recent years, things around the world have changed pretty massively, and that in the last decades, every economy and every firm has kind of established a continuous process, a permanent process of transformation, of not just innovation, I would say, but more transformation, in the sense that every company, every organization, actually also in the public field around the world, is required to continuously introduce changes that sometimes are also very big changes, very, very radical changes in their business models, in their organizational culture, in the way in which they work, and then of course also in the products and services that they develop and deliver. This process is called by the Boston Consulting Group as an always-on transformation. This always-on transformation in more recent years has then acquired some specific characteristics that are those defined by the World Economic Forum as the twin transition. So we don't need just to continuously transform our organizations, our businesses, our services, but we need to do that following two principles. Those of this digitalization on the one hand, but also those of sustainability on the other end. So what it is recommended to all organizations, every kind of organization around the world by international bodies is to bring forward these two processes together. So digitalizing processes in order to make them more efficient, but on the other hand, taking care of the effects that this process has on the planet, on the environment, and on the society. So keeping in mind that everything we need to do from now on must be sustainable from these several points of view. In this context, we know that design, service design, among the others, has been acknowledged as a driver of innovation and transformation, as it is represented by the very famous design letter developed by the Danish Design Center, which says that right now design is not just doesn't have only a styling function, but most importantly, it has acquired a strategic function. And most of the companies that are nowadays adopting design processes, design approaches and principles do that because of these peculiar capacities of design. But on the other hand, we must also admit that there is very little evidence, very objective evidence about the fact that design can actually bring such benefits when introduced into a company, into an organization. And this is because in the design field, in the design practice, it is pretty rare that we conduct a measurement of our processes, of our capacities, or of the outputs of our work. And so, lacking this measurement, lacking these objective evidences, it becomes also difficult to motivate, to justify, to explain that design can actually have this power and be so beneficial when introduced into an organization. And in fact, especially in recent years, people have started questioning about the fact that service design can be actually the right approach. It is sufficient in order to face the very complex and very massive transformation that are required by the evolution of the socio-economic context. While on the other hand, some other people, mainly design studios, very renowned design studios, as you can see from the examples I put here in the slide, are wondering how we can set some standards, for example, some quality standards for service design in order to, demonstrate the power, the benefits that it can bring, or how can we measure on the other hand the changes it can bring forward at organizational level, if not at socioeconomic level, with respect to the services that are designed with such approaches and tools. And so, starting, from this reflection, we can understand that it's becoming paramount in this context to, to understand how to measure the impact of service design. But then the question that arises is, okay, so then how can we do that? How can we assess service design impact? And I'm afraid that the answer is that we don't know yet. So we don't have yet consolidated ways, structured ways to measure such impacts. But there has been in the last few years some people that have started to reflecting on this topic and that have tried to develop some ways that can be useful and that we can start use in order to create the evidence that is currently missing. Among the other, for sure, the Service Design Network has created a volume of touchpoint there. Magazine a few years ago entirely dedicated to measuring impact and value of service design, and more recently they also issued this report about the impact of service design in the public sector. But from my point of view, which I tried to explore this topic and really understand how we can integrate measurement evaluation in the design process, the first thing that we need to realize when we talk about measuring service design impact is that actually we are not going to measure the impact, but most probably what we are going to do is to evaluate the service design process or the services that are produced, that are developed through service design approaches and skills, because impact assessment is a very specialized discipline that has some specific characteristics and that are very difficult to measure. So basically, there is a differentiation that needs to be understood between evaluation and impact assessment that is about what they actually assess. So when we talk about evaluation, we are talking about evaluating the output of a certain action, which can be also a service design action, in terms of what is concretely realized, the capacity of achieving predefined objectives. So, for example, if we consider as an action, as a possible action to be measured, running a course, maybe also running a design course, a direct output that we can measure is, for example, the number of people attending the course. This is something that can be easily done also in the case of service design. Another thing that we can for sure try to assess are the outcomes of certain actions. So considering the outcomes, the consequences, the effects of such actions on the beneficiaries that they want to address. So thinking at a service design action, for example, we could assess the outcomes with respect to the company that we are serving, our client company. Going back to the example of the course I was making before, the outcome could be the number of people who can find a job after attending that specific course. So as you can see, there's a difference between outputs and outcomes in the sense that outputs are very direct measures, while outcomes are the effects of such measures, but that still we can retrieve by collecting some data. What is much more difficult to assess are actually the impacts of such actions, and so including also service design actions, because impacts are defined as that portion of an outcome that can be attributed uniquely to an action, removing all the external sources and influences, so that we can fully understand what have been caused by that action and not, for example, by other contextual factors that are happening in the context in which we are working. So, for example, considering the course example I was making before, an impact could be the variation in the employment rate in the target population of the course. But as you can easily understand, the difficulty in measuring this impact is the fact that we must understand how to attribute the employment rate exclusively to the course effects rather than to other actions, other contextual factors that have been put in place in order to increase the employment rate in that specific location, in that specific area. So actually, starting from this, we need to realize that when we talk about impact assessment, we are actually talking about very long-term measures that assess broader lasting effects on people and the planet of our actions. So if we argue that we want to assess service design impact, we should intend this kind of things. So measuring service design impact in the long term, considering the effects that service design has brought on the people and the planet thanks to its actions. In fact, when we talk about impact assessment, we usually, so the impact assessment literature, theory, and so on, talk about three different kinds of impact assessment. One that is the economic impact that is generated through certain action, and then the social impact, so the effects on the people that certain action can bring, and the environmental impact that are the effects on the planet that certain action bring. So usually impact assessment is based on the conjunction between these three factors, the three impacts that altogether constitute the so-called triple bottom line, which basically is a method, it's an approach that says, that recognizes that a business success should not only be measured by its financial performance, but also by its contribution to the well-being of people and the planet. And in fact, impact assessment usually refers to the very famous Sustainable Development Goals, which have been developed by the United Nations. I guess you know, everybody knows about them, and that define the directions toward which each individual and organization of the world should actually address in order to altogether improve the conditions in which people live and in which the planet in which we live is actually evolving. So it was very important for me to specify these aspects because even though it is very, very common to talk about impact, to talk about impact evaluation, and also in the service design field, more and more we hear about measuring service design impact. Actually, the kind of assessment that we can do is not an impact assessment unless we follow these characteristics that I just illustrated. What we can actually do more easily, and that also existing experiences of evaluation in service design are telling us are that the kind of evaluation that we can perform are of two types. So on the one hand, what we can do is to assess the value of service design, so not the impact, but the value of service design in and for the innovation process. Or what we can do is to measure the service value, so the value of the services that we develop and deliver as designers, as the outcome of our service design process. So we start from here, okay, actually, when we talk about measuring service design impact. What we can actually do, what we can realistically do is rather to assess service design value or service value with respect to what we have designed and developed. So focusing on the first type, so service design evaluation, there are many, not so many actually, but there are already few models, let's say, that can help us in performing this kind of evaluation. One of these is proposed, for example, in this paper, where the authors try to identify the possible metrics for assessing the level of design achieved by a certain company on the different layers, on the different scale of the design ladder that I showed you before. And as you can see here in the table, they consider the four levels of design maturity, let's say, so from no design to design strategy, as I mentioned before. And for each of these levels, they try to identify what could be the metrics to measure the level of service design in a certain organization. These measures, of course, can be organizational measures, so that are internal, let's say, to the company, but can also be external measures, so addressing, as I was saying before, the services that are realized as outputs and outcomes of the service design process. Another attempt of measuring service design is proposed by the design value scorecard, which is another tool that you can easily retrieve online, developed by the Design Management Institute, which help assess what role design plays in the organization, where design is adding value, how well design is executing, what role design could play in the future. As you can see, in this case, they don't refer specifically to service design, but to design more in general. Anyway, considering design as a strategic lever, and so very close to what actually is the core purpose, the core principle of service design. And again, sorry, in this case, they propose an evaluation from 1 to 5, let's say, in order to understand in each of these areas what is the maturity, the level of design achieved. Another example, again, is another tool is provided by McKinsey, the McKinsey Design Index, which is actually an online tool that you can access for free. You just need to register to the platform, that allows leaders, in this case, it addresses design leaders, to assess their company's design performance by answering to a number of questions. And by comparing the answers with 300 other companies as a benchmark, and thus helping again to compare the level of design performance with respect to these other companies. Then again, we have the Design Maturity Survey developed by Artifact, which is another online tool which allows to assess design maturity over these 5 indicators, so empathy, mastery, character, performance, impact, again on a specific scale that they provide. And finally, the service design maturity model, which is actually the only model specifically dedicated to service design, which is proposed by COS, and is a 5-stage model that again reflect on the level of embedding service design in a certain organization, and reflecting on the transformation potential that it can actually bring when service design is introduced in an organization. Also in this case, they define 5 different levels of integration, from explore to thrive, and they propose to assess according to 4 different factors, which are people and resources, tool and capabilities, organizational structures, and metrics and deliverables. So I don't have, we don't have enough time, of course, to go into detail of each of these examples, but they are all accessible online, and so using these references that I just gave you, you can easily retrieve them and also experiment with them a little bit if you are interested in the topic, or if you are curious to know what's the level of your organization in terms of design maturity, and so on. So these are so far the methods, the models available for actually assessing the value of service design in and for the innovation process. But as I was saying before, this is not the only way that we can perform, that we can do in order to assess if our work as service designers is actually bringing some positive effects, some benefits in the context for the people that we are working for. And to do that, the kind of evaluation that we can perform is what we can call service evaluation. So trying to measure the service value as the outcome of the service design process. Actually, there is much more literature, much more experience on service evaluation rather than on service design evaluation, as we can easily guess, because how to evaluate a service considering the specific characteristics of services that we all know very well has been an issue that has been studied for long in disciplines that are not design disciplines, but that are mainly service marketing, service management, and in some way also social sciences. In general, to summarize and simplify a bit, for the sake of this speech, what we can say is that the main success factors for services that can be measured, that can be in some way evaluated, can be summarized in service quality, service performance, and customer satisfaction. That I'm sure are concepts that all of you have dealt a lot about. Especially customer satisfaction. So I guess that everybody here has run or has filled a customer satisfaction survey sooner or later. Customer satisfaction surveys are the easier, I would say, also more accessible ways to obtain information about the success of a service for the customers, the users that it serves. Customer satisfaction surveys are very easy surveys made of very few closed questions, such as the one that you can see here on the right on the screen. and that are aimed at measuring user satisfaction with respect every time to different aspects of a certain service or product service system. For example, they can address the employee's performance, the buying experience, the retail experience if the services at hand entail a retail store, or the customer service for digital services, for example. And there are also many variations of customer satisfaction surveys that are called in slightly different ways, such as a customer satisfaction score, customer satisfaction effort, but that are very similar ways of assessing customer insights by simply asking a few closed questions through a survey. Another very famous tool to assess service loyalty in this case, is the Net Promoter Score. Which basically consists in is a very easy tool that basically consists in posing one single question to users, to customers, that is, would you suggest this service to someone else? And requiring to answer on a scale from 1 to 10, where those that answer from 1 to 6 are considered detractors of the service. Those that answer 7 or 8 are considered passives, so neutral with respect to the service. And those that answer 9 or 10 are considered promoters of the service. And the Net Promoter Score basically consists in detracting the percentage of promoters, the percentage of detractors from the percentage of promoters. And the number that you obtain through this simple operation should help understand what's the level of loyalty among the service customers. There are then other tools, other methods that have been developed by people working in the field of service marketing and management in order to assess service quality and other similar or service performance, as I was mentioning before. The more diffused and renowned one is for sure the ServQual method, or also called in some cases ServPerf, that actually allows to assess the difference between expected and perceived service, so expected service before it is actually used, before it is actually fully understood and adopted by the user, versus the perceived service once it has been used, and so the user has actually all the information to assess it. This tool consists again in a survey, basically, made of 22 questions that cover the 5 dimensions that you can read below. So the reliability, the assurance, the tangibles, empathy, and the responsiveness of the service. The questionnaire, in order to be able to make the comparison between what was expected and what is actually perceived, requires to be filled in twice by the respondents, one before using the service and one after having used it. And again, then there is a calculation that can be done according to the answers, and that allow to establish what is the level of quality of the service. And then again, other tools that are very, very well known are the important performance analysis, which is a matrix, as the one that you can see here, that help identify what attributes of a service are underperforming or overperforming, in order to then understand where to intervene, so what to change, what to redesign. Of course, the tool is not just the matrix, but in order to fill the matrix is necessary to run some focus groups, for example, some interviews that allows to gather the information about the attributes that are going to be assessed. And then we have the balanced scorecard, which is a management tool that allows a manager to have an overview, a fast and comprehensive overview of the business performance in terms of what customer perceives, the internal perspective, so how the organization is performing, how the organization is working with respect to the future, so if it's innovating and learning in a continuous way, and then how external stakeholders from a financial point of view assess the organization. So again, this picture that you see on the right just represents, let's say, the final visualization of the information, input and organize all the information that must be collected through other tools, through financial data, through, again, getting in contact with customers and retrieving their perspective, and so on and so forth. And lastly, there is in most recent year, a particular attention toward the measurement of the so-called return on experience. So not just return on investment as a ROI that maybe you have already heard about, help us evaluate, but in this case is about measuring the value of investment across customer experience, employee experience, and leadership experience. So trying to address the experience factor, which is actually very crucial in any kind of services, and that is considered in this case as the one that every organization should invest on and should then retrieve the maximum value from. So again, as I was mentioning before, we don't have enough time to enter into detail of each of these methods and tools, but again, they are very well known and you can easily retrieve information on the web if you are interested in performing one of these evaluations. I decided to, give you this overview just to make you understand that there is already a lot going on in the field, even though not in the design field yet. So if we as designers want to start introduce this some kind of measurement in our practice, of course we need to refer to extra disciplinary knowledge, such as those provided by these methods and tools, or in other ways that I'm now going to explain. Because it is true that there is already a lot going on and there are already a lot of existing tools that we can use, but actually from a design point of view, I believe that these tools are not covering all the complexity, all the necessity of a service evaluation. Because as I was saying in the beginning, what they measure are basically three aspects that are the service quality, the service performance, and the customer satisfaction. But if we look at the service quality, for example, as the overarching value value that is assessed in a service, we must admit that it is not a singular value, but it is a multidimensional value, because service quality can be interpreted, intended, and perceived very differently depending on who is using this term, the term service quality. So actually, from my point of view, it would be more correct to talk about service value, measuring the service value and not just the service quality, with the purpose of enabling a learning process that can foster the service transformation. Because another thing that we need to keep in mind is that every time we perform an evaluation, a service design evaluation or a service evaluation, we need to be aware that we are not doing it just for making a judgment, making a critique, but actually we are doing it for learning something about that process and that service, that approach or that service, learning something that can help us improve, redesign, readjust the way in which we are doing things. And of course, if we talk about service evaluation, as for any other kind of evaluation, we need to be aware that there is not a predefined strategy. There is not a right or wrong tool that we can use to perform this assessment, but we need to design it, define it every time, depending on the context at hand, and always involving the decision makers or the stakeholders that have some interest in performing such evaluation and in obtaining this kind of data. So, in this perspective, we should consider service value as a dynamic and context-dependent concept, which can be constructed and perceived differently by the various actors that are taking part in the service life cycle, where the service life cycle, we can say, again, trying to simplify a bit, a process composed by these different phases. So starting from design of the service, going through the development of the project, of the service design project, to the manufacturing of the service itself, so the implementation of the service, to finally arrive to the phases in which the service is available to users, and they can actually take advantage of it for their activities. So looking at these different phases of the service life cycle, there are different kind of evaluation that we can perform, and accordingly, there are different values, different service value that we can retrieve from such process. So in general, we could say that we can evaluate the service before it is actually delivered and used, mainly from the provider perspective, because if we assess the service in the design, development, and manufacturing phases, of course, there is the only actor is the provider and its network of stakeholders, because the user is not engaged yet in the process. We can measure then during service delivery and use once the service is made available to people. And in this case, we can also include the user perspective, because they are finally able to get in contact with the service. But then we can also measure after services delivery and use. Again, trying to assess how users perceive the service once they have discovered it and used it for their activities. So if we consider that we can assess services from in these very different moments and from these different point of views, so both that of the provider and that of the of the user and maybe also that of the designers involved in the process, the following question is then, okay, so how can we integrate evaluation activities, evaluation practices into the service design process? So while we are designing a service, what kind of evaluation we can perform, and to assess what values, because as we said before, is not just one value, is not just service quality, but is a multifaceted value depending on the phase and the people we are considering. So we can say that the service design process corresponds with the three first phases of the service life cycle in a way that we could represent more or less in this way. So research and define phases of the service design process correspond to the design phase of the service life cycle, and so on. So if we think at the service design process in this way, then we can say that if we want to assess a service before it is actually implemented and delivered to users, from a design point of view, what we can assess are actually the concepts of the prototypes that we develop in our service design process. And in order to assess these concepts of prototype, we can use some existing methods, such as the service design scorecard, evaluation matrix, or also usability testing if we think at digital prototypes. I want just to show you the service design scorecard because I think is a very powerful tool that is existing, that is already available, and that is very interesting for assessing, for deciding what concept to bring forward among the many that could have been emerged from an ideation process, for example, from idea generation, and that allows to assess these concepts in a very structured way. By filling in this spreadsheet. Unfortunately, when we talk about assessment, measurement, evaluation, we need to deal with these kind of tools that are very far away sometimes from our design practice and that usually involve numbers and a bit of mathematics. So the service design scorecard help, as you can see here in the spreadsheet, to assess several ideas from different perspectives. So, for example, assessing them according to the strategic value that they can bring, or to how much they are desirable to the people that they address, how much they are viable from a business point of view, and how much they are feasible, for example, from an organizational and technical point of view. Then, of course, in order to be filled properly, this spreadsheet requires that for each of these value areas, let's say, some more specific criteria are identified, and the scores are attributed thanks to a discussion, basically, among the company, the people involved in the design process, or any other stakeholder that is considered relevant for establishing such measurements. So, as you can see, this tool exemplifies very well the multifaceted value dimension that a service can entail. That is not, as I was saying before, just service quality, but for example, in this case, it's considering strategic value, desirability, viability, feasibility, and there can be many other, of course, that can be considered. Going on, then, if we want to assess services in later stages of the service life cycle, we can say that in order to assess a service while it is delivered and used, so in the moment of interaction between the provider and the user, again, we can use some of the tools that I showed you before. So, for example, doing a customer satisfaction survey, using the Net Promoter Score. So, of course, we can exploit existing methods and tools, but we could also decide to collect data through other kind of activities that, for example, could be design ethnography activity, user research tools that we typically use, that as a service designer we are very familiar with. And these can entail interviews, surveys, observation, focus groups, and whatever comes to your mind. What's important is, of course, that they allow to retrieve data that then help us express an assessment and evaluation. And this is a crucial factor in this case, so that we don't need, we cannot confuse user research with evaluation research, even though they use the same tools that are design ethnography tools, okay? Because in both cases, they entail data collection and data interpretation thanks to this tool. But when we talk about evaluation, the final result is a judgment, is a value judgment that allow us to take decision, to take objective decision based on evidences that are produced through a codified process, codified criteria, and an explicit data collection process. So, of course, there would be a lot to say about the difference between user research and evaluation research, but I mean, these are the key points that need to be taken into consideration. And then to conclude, we can finally assess the service also after it's been delivered and used. So in the memory, let's say, of the users, and this is actually, in my opinion, the most important phase of evaluation because, for example, it allows us to assess services that are already existing and that, for example, could be redesigned based on the results of the evaluation. So just to summarize, we could say that these are the different moments of the service design process during which we can perform some evaluation that then can help us also say if service design has performed well or not, if it has brought some benefits or not. So we could assess existing services in the very beginning of the service design process when they need to be redesigned. We can assess service concepts, service ideas, or service prototypes while we are designing them in order to choose which is the best solution to bring forward and implement. And then finally, we can assess the service solutions once they have been implemented and once they have been used, they are used by the users that they address. I don't know if I have time to show you just a very quick example of service evaluation. So I ask the organizers.
I think it's fine.
I can go on for 5 minutes. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Just to show you a concrete example of evaluation that was performed during a design process, so that was integrated into a design process. So the case that I want to present is this that you can see, and is called BitRide. BitRide was a project run by a PMI called Zeus, which was a company, a very small company in Italy, who developed a technology, a technological device useful for transforming bicycles into hybrid bicycles. And the idea of the company was to exploit this technology also in order to create a new bike sharing service that was using these hybrid bikes instead of normal bikes, instead of electric bikes, as those already available around the world. So we were in charge in this case of designing a completely new service because it was not existing at that time. Here you can see how we decided to proceed. So as usual, we did an initial research phase followed by a design and development phase. And then we had the chance for prototyping the solution to run 2 pilot projects in a real context, so in the city of Milan. First pilot was conducted thanks to a small fleet of bikes, 50 bikes in a small area of the city, involving a selected sample of users. So we selected 150 people and we engaged them in using the service, in using the prototypes, so that we could, understand if it was performing well or not. And then after this first pilot, we ran a second pilot with more bikes, 300 bikes, in a broader service area. And in this case, the service prototype was open to the public, so everybody in the city could use the service for free. So what we needed to do in this case was to understand how to assess the service prototypes during these 2 pilot phases. With the objectives of assessing the key features that were introduced by this service, validating the service experience that we were designing, and also measuring the service attractiveness, because as I said before, this was a completely new service model, and so there was no competitor, let's say, in that moment. So based on these objectives, we've defined our evaluation strategy in the 2 phases, in the 2 pilot phases, which basically consisted in analyzing quantitative data provided by the sensors put on the bicycles, and analyzing data coming from the web application that was developed in order to access the bike sharing service. But we also created some questionnaires which were submitted to the sample of people involved in the first pilot phase, and to the broader, let's say, users in the second phase. We also did a final questionnaire also to compare the differences between expectations and perceptions of the service before and after using it. And then we also analyzed the complaints received from people that were using the service. In the case of for the second pilot phase, in addition to this, we also ran a focus group with some top users. So we identified a small group of people that were using a lot the service, and that could help us in really measuring how it was performing. And we also did some telephone interviews with people who were not able to join the focus group. And here you can see some of the results of this evaluation. So, for example, we were able to measure how the different riding modes from normal to hybrid to electric were actually performing. So, to understand if this hybrid model was actually bringing an advantage, a benefit with respect to existing models. So asking people how much they were comfortable with them and which one they preferred. Then we analyzed the flows of people around the cities from the pickup locations to the parking locations. So trying to understand, to measure from this data which were the more frequent flows, and thus making more bikes available in those areas with respect to others. From the analysis of complaints and problems reported by user, we realized that there were a lot of issues from the technology point of view. So in the communication between the bikes and the application, the web application, which were impeding people having a smooth service experience. But thanks to the analysis of these complaints, we were able to actually identify very precisely which were the issues to be solved first of all. And then, thanks to the final questionnaires, we were also able to evaluate the specific features that were introduced and that were designed ad hoc for this service. Also to understand if people were fully understanding them, were fully capturing the value of these features, and if in general the service was attractive for them with respect to other existing bike sharing services available in the city in that moment. And here you can see a summary of the overall results that we obtained. Saying that the quality of bike were considered an added value, so as the attractive aspect of this service was actually the quality of the bikes, of the vehicles. The hybrid technology was appreciated, but actually was not considered much more efficient than the normal standard mode. And so the company understood that they had to work more on this technology from certain point of view. The solution was perceived innovative and superior to other existing bike sharing services, also because the key features that we introduced were considered as an added value in the service experience. And so we decided to bring them forward thanks to these evidences. And so on and so forth. So this is just a simple example. Actually, performing this evaluation was very complex, but this is just an easy example to show you that actually bringing forward some evaluation activities, some measurement during the design process can actually bring evidences that allows to inform decisions in terms of design, decisions that are supported by objective numbers. And so this is always very much appreciated by companies, by investors, and so on and so forth. Of course, there is also a negative issue, a negative aspect in relation to evaluation, that besides the fact that it requires some specialistic competencies and it's a task that requires some efforts to be performed, is that also is not perceived very positively. Especially by people that are addressed by an evaluation. So if you think at, for example, assessing the employees of a service, in the moment in which they feel judged, of course, it's not a pleasant moment, a pleasant experience, and so it can be also difficult to retrieve data from them. And the same is for a company. So telling them that something they are doing is not performing well can be perceived in a negative way, but and in most of the cases, what is said is that evaluation is not objective but is subjective. And so is just bringing opinions that are questionable, and so cannot be taken into consideration. But of course, this is not true, because for sure there is a certain kind of subjectivity in any kind of evaluation, because we are talking about interpreting data, and when we interpret something, there is also a possible alternative, in interpretation. But if we are able to make explicit the way in which we are assessing, the criteria that we are using, we are building tools in a solid way, and we are explaining why, very explicitly, why we are reaching certain interpretations, evaluation is actually a super powerful activity that can really bring difference in the way in which we design, and that can also help us, if we all start doing it in a systematic way, in the long term will also help us express in a more solid way that the impact that service design is actually bringing. So I am sorry if I took some minutes more than expected, but I hope, even though it's a pretty difficult topic, I hope that I've been able to share at least some initial knowledge, and that, at least I gave you some, I sparked some curiosity.
No, I think it was really excellent the way you explained the differences, as well as the how we can really measure the output, outcomes, and the impact. I think it was really, really good. So over to you, Silvan.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Francesca. It was a really insightful topic. There was really a lot of rich content in it, and you really made a lot of points very distinctly. You brought the distinction between what is outcomes, what is an output, what is an impact,
Yeah.
and what is the service design value versus what is a service value. I think it's really useful for us in all our practice. So like it's a very important topic for us to evaluate as well as measure impact and how it works out for us. I think it's really you've given us a rich toolkit, a
Thank
lot of
you.
models and things that we can really look at and really use in our practice. Thank you very much for that. I would like to ask a few questions. Maybe one of the main question I think might be also running in the minds of others is that in most of our designs, when we come up with any concepts, you spoke a bit about it. We really not just in a sense of evaluating or understanding what is the impact, but we need to communicate the impact, or rather you can say return on investment even before implementing it. We want a buy-in from our leadership or the management, and we need to estimate or express or project it or really communicate what will be the impact of the design, so that there's a buy-in and investment in it. And to compound that, I think additionally, we ourselves may not be really sure whether the solution will work or not. We need to test it out. In a sense, it is iterative. We have to put it out there. We can do an initial evaluation, improve the ideas and so on. But eventually, once it's out in the field, we need to constantly improve and iterate. So in a sense,
Absolutely.
it's difficult to really measure. At least estimate in advance. So how do we deal with this, or what any guidelines or thoughts on that?
Yeah, so ideally, we should, as we are doing always on transformation, we should also do an always on evaluation. Okay, so the ideal situation would be that while we design a service, we also design the way in which monitor it throughout his life, okay? And so triggering a continuous evaluation process. So first, that doesn't stop, let's say, at the first release, but that if we continuously monitor and we continuously collect data, that then of course we can always go back and inform the development of new concepts and new ideas and new prototypes and whatever. So I don't know if I answer your question, but yeah, so we are still in the, I would say that in the case of service design, of design actually in general, we are still in the very initial phases, even though this is a topic that is becoming a kind of buzzword, a kind of mainstream in recent years, especially because we hear a lot to talk about environmental impact and so on and so forth. But we are still in the very beginning, so we need to build as designers, so we need to build everything from scratch.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's good. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there are a few questions. I will take those up.
Yeah.
So one of them is how much of what you spoke about today would be the same for product design as compared to, say, service design? Are they, is it the same or would it be different?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the way in which we build an evaluation strategy, the way in which we build indicators is the same, okay? Every kind of evaluation is done in this way. What is evaluated, of course, is different because, for example, in the case of products, there are also some material components that can be assessed that maybe are not available in the case of services. And again, products, the use of products usually does not entail a process, but there are some common ways of doing that. In fact, if you remember in the beginning, I was saying that the existing models are not specifically addressing service design, but they are addressing design in general. Because they also apply to other kind of design solutions, also communication, for example, not only products or services. But yeah, I mean, for sure, for products, there are specific tools, as there are for services, but the overall approach to evaluation is the same.
Right, right. So additionally, I wanted to add, when you differentiated between evaluation of service design and service value,
Yeah.
so like at the initial part of your talk, you you spoke about the impact from a perspective of planetary or social, the triple bottom line. So
Yeah.
the impact
Yeah.
of that. Just wondering, when you speak about services, it's not just about, say, the experience or customer satisfaction, and it's not just anymore about the service attributes or dimension itself, but it goes to other consequences which may be
Yes.
intended and unintended.
Yes.
So how does those fit in the models that you discuss? Would they also cover those aspects?
I mean, as I was saying in the beginning, impact assessment is a very specialized practice. Okay. So there are existing tools, existing frameworks that are available for assessing social impact. For example, probably you have heard about the social return on investment.
Yeah.
Okay, so which is trying to understand how much of the money invested is bringing a social value. Okay, this is a standard way of measuring social impact that could also be used, of course, in the case of service design. Both, I mean, can be applied to both assess the social impact of service design as a process, but also to assess the social impact of services that we design, okay? Impact assessment is a kind of evaluation that is done in the longer term. And so in order to be able to really measure the impacts, we need to wait. So for example, if we do an intervention in a certain company, we introduce a certain, we perform a certain project through service designers, through service design competencies. For example, we should wait 1 year after the end of the project before being able to assess the impact, because we cannot assess them immediately. We need to wait, wait and see what happens, okay? And for example, after 1 year, then we could use codified methods such as the social impact assessment of the environmental impact assessment, which are framework that are existing and that can be used to assess if it's actually bringing some impacts in these two fields. Otherwise, what we can measure in the short term is just the service value in terms of outputs and outcomes, as I was saying in the beginning.
Correct. So
Yeah,
we
go ahead.
have one more question related
Yeah.
to. Can you please elaborate a bit more on the leadership experience aspect of return on experience, what you talked about?
Yeah, so basically what are assessed here are 3 different experiences. So one, the customer experience, so the experience from the point of view of the customer, the employee experience, so from the point of view of the people working in the organization, and the leadership experience, so the experience of managers, basically, so of design leaders, or of people that are in charge of making decisions and directing the company. So in this sense is called the leadership experience.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry, my laptop just rebooted.
No worries.
Ravi on mute. Yeah. Ravi, you're speaking on mute. We cannot hear you.
Yeah, so I'm saying that you can start with the next question. How often research about the
Yeah.
evaluation? That question I already asked you.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, Professor. So the next question is about how often research about the evaluation.
I'm not fully understanding this.
Do
Well,
you
I
do you have any specific scenario that are often used? I think how often do you research about evaluation? I believe that it's asking about.
Okay.
And any
That's what
specific
I'm
citations
understanding.
or URLs that look at the research about evaluation in terms of theory about
Okay.
evaluation.
Yeah. I see. So my main reference is program evaluation literature. It is called in this way. So it is called program evaluation. That is the theory that has been codified decades ago by several scholars in order to assess public programs and policies. Okay, so starting from the need that was emerging in the last century of understanding how public funds, public money was used in performing certain kind of programs, public programs and initiatives, there was the need also to develop a more consolidated approach. And so starting from this need, a certain bunch of scholars, mainly from the US, developed this program evaluation theory, which basically tells us how to build an evaluation strategy, what are the different purposes of evaluation that we can bring forward, what are the different tools. So my main reference to build, what I presented and to elaborate my research on evaluation comes from that field.
Yeah, that is good to know. Thank you. And I think the last question here is about evaluation tools will have to be modified while working with different or varied levels of socioeconomic background. Could you suggest a few things one should adopt and keep in mind while using these evaluations in such situations?
Well,
Yes.
yes and no. Yes, because of course tools are just tools. Our medium support that we use in order to perform a certain activity and achieve a certain objectives. And of course, what we learned from our practice as service designer is that every time when we do a workshop, for example, we need to adapt tools depending on the people that we are addressing and the activities that we have to perform. Of course, this applies also in the case of evaluation, but till a certain point, because if we are talking about running interviews, focus groups, and so on and so forth, of course, there is room for adaptation, a lot of room for adaptation. It is required they require to be adapted. If we consider consolidated tools, such as those that I presented, there's not so much room for adaptation, because especially when they are based on numerical calculations, then if we change them, they don't work anymore. So we need to build a new tool, basically, not adapt an existing tool. Okay, so I think that this adaptation feature applies very well when we deal with qualitative data, but not so much if we deal with quantitative measures.
Mm-hmm. And the last question is interesting. How do you handle situations where different measurement tools give conflicting insights? Does this happen often?
No, not really. My experience, if we obtain conflicting results, there is something wrong in the methodology, probably. So, but yeah, of course, this could happen. And in this case, what I would do is to go back and try to figure out why they are giving conflicting results. So if it was just a matter of, for example, collecting data in an appropriate way, or maybe if, I don't know, this is providing a relevant insight. So there is a reason why people are expressing themselves in different way, for example. But yeah, in general, I think that if we build a methodology that is very solid, structured, the risk of obtaining conflicting results then is very low.
Okay. Would this even be in the case of, say, quantitative methods versus qualitative methods where conflicts would be still low?
Yeah, in that case, qualitative insights maybe sometimes can bring some conflicting information, but then being qualitative is a matter of understanding. Okay, so it's because we built, for example, the sample in the wrong way. What is conflicting is just a minority, or it's a massive, let's say, issue. And so depending on the situation, then figure out if it's the conflict is a result actually to be taken into consideration, or if it's an error.
Great. I think that's very insightful. On behalf of Ravi, Prasad, any other questions you would like to ask? I think all we should.
No. I think Silvan, we can conclude.
Thank you. On behalf of the organizing committee and all the participants of and hoping to see everyone at ServDes conference as well. We would like to really thank you for today's insightful session. It was very rich. We got a lot of sort of material to really look and study further and really use in our practice. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you. Thanks to you. It was very nice to be here. It was a pleasure to be part of this new conference, also from remote for the moment, and for giving me the chance to talk about this topic, which I think is very important, and we should, start talking about it more and more.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to all the participants. Just a quick announcement. Our next session is scheduled for the March 21st March, and it is going to be held by our speaker is Dr. Professor Daniela Sangiorgi, and she'll be speaking about the future trends in service design, another interesting topic for all of us. And just to note, the timing will be at 4 p.m., which is different from the other sessions we've had till now. So please be aware of that. So that's on March 21st, 2025. I'm looking forward to seeing you everyone for that session as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Silvan. Thanks, Francesca. It was really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.